At 9:51 in the morning on April 13th, 2026, 11 minutes before the United States naval blockade of Iranian ports officially takes effect, a single contact appears on the USS Gerald R. Ford's SPY-6 radar. Bearing 047, range 194 kilometers, sea skimming at 910 kilometers per hour, 8 meters above the water. Already inbound, Lieutenant Commander Yara Sale, electronic warfare officer, 11 years in, the officer who spent the last 4 days filing hourly threat assessments warning that the collapse of the Islamabad talks would produce an Iranian strike within 72 hours, and received back each time a single line noting her assessment had been logged and forwarded, looks at the contact's guidance signature on her passive sensor display and notices something that takes her 4 seconds to process. The launch sequence on this missile started at 9:39 in the morning, not 9:51, not when the blockade was announced, not when the post went up on Truth Social, not when CENTCOM issued the enforcement order. 9:39, 12 minutes before the blockade officially began. 12 minutes before Iran had any legal or military justification to call it an act of war. This missile was not fired in response to the blockade. It was already in the air before the blockade existed. Iran did not react to the blockade. Iran used the blockade as cover for an attack they had already decided to execute the moment the Islamabad talks collapsed. The ceasefire meant nothing. The talks meant nothing. The missile was coming regardless. And now it is 4 minutes and 9 seconds from the hull of the most powerful carrier in the world. They are wrong about what started this. They are wrong about everything. In the Combat Information Center, Tactical Action Officer Commander David Okafor has the engagement sequence running in 9 seconds. 2 SM-6 interceptors climbing. Fire control solution building clean. 1 contact, standard geometry, the crew of the Gerald R. Ford has defeated this exact profile 44 times in 44 days of war. Okafor watches the solution build and feels nothing unusual. Sale picks up the circuit to the Combat Information Center at 9:51 and 22 seconds. Sir, the contact's launch sequence initiated at 9:39, not 9:51. This missile was fired 12 minutes before the blockade took effect. I have the launch signature timestamp locked in the passive sensor log. This was not a response to the blockade. This was pre-planned. The decision was made in Islamabad when the talks collapsed. They were never going to honor the ceasefire. I have been filing this assessment for 4 days. Okafor looks at his display. 1 contact, clean solution. He tells Saleh her assessment has been logged and asks her to stand by. Sale does not stand by. To understand what Iran fired at the USS Gerald R. Ford that morning, you need to understand what the Noor anti-ship missile actually does to a carrier strike group's defensive sequence. Because this is not a standard engagement. The Noor is Iran's most capable anti-ship cruise missile. Chinese-derived, sea skimming at 8 meters altitude, terminal phase active radar homing with an infrared backup seeker, 165-kilogram warhead, range 170 kilometers. Iran has fired versions of this weapon 41 times in 44 days of war. The Ford's crew has defeated every single one. They defeated them because the Noor in standard configuration commits to its terminal guidance early. The SPY-6 reads the commitment. The SM-6 goes to where the missile is going to be. The missile arrives. The SM-6 is already there. 41 times, same result. Iran studied all 41 defeats. Iran understood exactly what was making the Noor fail. And in the 12 minutes between the Islamabad talks collapsing and this missile's launch sequence initiating, someone in Tehran made one change to the terminal guidance package. One change that Sale had been warning about in her assessments for 4 days. The Noor fired at the Gerald R. Ford this morning is not committing to its terminal guidance early. It is flying a randomized evasion pattern in the terminal phase, not a fixed evasion, random, computer-generated. Different on every approach, a pattern the Aegis fire control system cannot predict because it was not programmed to be predictable. Every SM-6 fire control solution the Aegis builds assumes the missile will continue on a calculable trajectory. This missile does not have a calculable trajectory. It has a random one. And you cannot intercept random. Iran did not fire this missile because of the blockade. Iran fired this missile because they spent 44 days studying 41 defeats and found the one change that made the 42nd shot different from every shot that came before it. At 9:53 in the morning, the first SM-6 reaches its intercept point. The Noor executes a randomized 3.1-degree correction, not the correction the fire control solution predicted, a different one generated by the onboard computer in the 0.4 seconds before intercept. The SM-6 detonates 280 meters from the missile, outside lethal fragmentation range. Miss. Sale is not watching the intercept sequence. She has been watching something else since 9:51 and 14 seconds. The missile's active radar seeker emission profile. The Noor's terminal seeker activates at a specific range and transmits on a specific frequency band. This one is transmitting on a frequency 340 megahertz outside the standard Noor seeker band. Not random, specific. A frequency she has seen once before in a signals intelligence report from a 2024 Iranian naval exercise in the Gulf of Oman. A partial intercept of a modified Noor test round. A frequency that appeared for 0.6 seconds in the report before the transmission ended. She had flagged it, filed it, included it in 3 of her 4 days of threat assessments that came back logged and forwarded every time. All hands, brace for impact. Sale transmits at 9:55 and 03 seconds. Not to the Combat Information Center, not to the Admiral, to the EA-18G Growler, already airborne on electronic warfare patrol. At 28,000 feet above the formation, Lieutenant Commander Webb and his electronic warfare officer. She transmits 1 packet, Noor seeker frequency, 340 megahertz outside standard band. Focused jamming solution. Active seeker disruption. Transmit now. Webb's electronic warfare officer looks at the frequency packet for 2 seconds. He does not ask who sent it. He does not ask for authorization. The Growler's jamming pod activates. Focused, narrow band. Targeted at the exact frequency Sale identified from a 0.6-second intercept in a 2024 signals intelligence report that she flagged and filed and included in 4 days of threat assessments that came back logged and forwarded every single time. 1 minute and 51 seconds became 1 minute and 19 seconds. The Noor's active radar seeker receives the jamming signal at 9:55 and 11 seconds. The seeker does not go blind. It does something worse. It begins searching for the hull signature it lost in the jamming, expanding its search cone, widening its aperture, looking for the Gerald R. Ford across a broader sector of ocean. The randomized evasion pattern that had been defeating every SM-6 fire control solution in the engagement was generated by the onboard computer based on the seeker's last confirmed hull position. The seeker has lost the hull position. The evasion pattern has no anchor. The computer is generating random corrections around a position that no longer exists in the seeker's data. The missile is evading randomly around nothing. It is still flying toward the Ford's general bearing, but the precision of the terminal approach, the calculated evasion band that had been keeping the missile exactly 160 to 280 meters outside every SM-6 lethal fragmentation radius, is gone. The missile is now simply flying. The Phalanx completes its reload cycle at 9:55 and 19 seconds. It reacquires the contact. The Noor executes a correction, but the correction is no longer anchored to the Gerald R. Ford's actual hull position. It is anchored to the last position the seeker recorded before the jamming hit. A position the Gerald R. Ford occupied 4 seconds ago. At 30 knots, a carrier moves 61 meters in 4 seconds. The Phalanx fires its 3rd burst. The Noor has corrected toward a position 61 meters to the left of where the carrier actually is. The burst finds the missile 31 meters inside the lethal fragmentation radius. Fragments reach the airframe. The warhead does not detonate. The guidance section separates from the motor. The motor continues forward on its last committed trajectory. The warhead section tumbles. Both impact the Arabian Sea 340 meters off the Gerald R. Ford's port bow at 9:55 and 44 seconds. The motor detonates on water impact. The explosion sends a column of white water 290 feet into the air. The pressure wave reaches the Gerald R. Ford's hull 0.3 seconds later. The ship shudders. 11 crew members in the port side compartments are thrown against bulkheads. 4 windows on the island structure crack from the structural movement. 3 compartments lose power for 7 seconds. Nothing penetrates the hull. 340 meters, the closest the modified Noor came to the hull. It spent 44 days being studied. It spent 12 days being rebuilt. It flew 4 minutes and 17 seconds toward a carrier it never touched. In the Combat Information Center, nobody spoke for 5 seconds. Then Okafor picked up the circuit to Sale's console. Lieutenant Commander Sale, walk me through what just happened. Sale looked at her display. The launch timestamp she had identified at 9:51 and 14 seconds. The 340 megahertz offset she had flagged from a 2024 signals intelligence report. The 4 days of threat assessments that came back logged and forwarded. The jamming package she had transmitted to Webb's Growler without authorization at 9:55 and 03 seconds because Okafor had told her to stand by. And 1 minute and 51 seconds was not enough time to wait for authorization on a non-kinetic response option. Sir, the contact was a modified Noor with a randomized terminal evasion package. The modification was designed specifically around the SM-6 intercept geometry Iran observed across 41 previous engagements. I identified the seeker frequency offset at 9:51 from a 2024 SIGINT report I flagged 4 days ago. I transmitted a focused jamming solution to Webb's Growler at 9:55 and 03 seconds. The seeker lost hull lock. The evasion pattern lost its anchor. The phalanx found it at 31 meters inside fragmentation range on its 3rd burst. Okafor was quiet for 5 seconds. When did you know they were going to fire? Sale looked at the timestamp on her first threat assessment. 4 days ago, sir. The moment the Islamabad talks started. They were never going to reach an agreement. The missile's launch sequence confirms it. They initiated at 9:39, 11 minutes before the blockade. This was decided in Islamabad, not here. Okafor did not respond to that for a moment. Then he picked up the strike authorization circuit. The Noor's active seeker had been transmitting on its modified frequency since 9:51, transmitting continuously from a launch platform on the Iranian coastline that had been stationary since 9:39. Stationary because it had fired its 1 missile and was receiving telemetry back from the seeker throughout the engagement. Stationary for 16 minutes on a known frequency from a fixed position. Sale had been triangulating that position since 9:51 and 14 seconds. 16 minutes of continuous transmission, position fixed to within 9 meters. She transmitted the coordinates to the Combat Information Center at 9:56. 2 FA-18 Super Hornets already airborne on combat air patrol released 4 GBU-31 JDAM guided bombs from 29,000 feet at 9:57. The launch platform had fired the most sophisticated anti-ship missile Iran had ever put in the air. It had stayed to watch its missile work. It had 16 minutes and 44 seconds to feel whatever satisfaction that represented before the first bomb arrived. The launch platform, its crew, and Iran's modified Noor guidance program ceased to exist at 9:57 and 44 seconds. Sale transmitted the 340 megahertz seeker frequency and the focused jamming solution to every EA-18G Growler in theater at 9:58. 4 Growlers immediately began broadcasting targeted jamming on that frequency across their entire operational sectors. Every modified Noor Iran had remaining that relied on the active seeker for its randomized evasion anchor was now flying blind in its terminal phase. Every randomized evasion pattern Iran had spent 44 days engineering around the SM-6's intercept geometry was now evading around nothing. The modification that had defeated 4 SM-6 interceptors in 4 minutes and 17 seconds was neutralized across the entire theater by a frequency offset from a 0.6-second signals intelligence intercept from 2024 that Sale had flagged and filed and included in 4 days of threat assessments that came back logged and forwarded every time. Iran fired its most sophisticated missile at the USS Gerald R on the morning the blockade began. A weapon 44 days in the engineering, built around 41 observed defeats, designed to evade every SM-6 intercept solution the Aegis system could generate. It defeated 4 interceptors. It defeated 2 phalanx bursts. It came 340 meters from the hull, with nothing left to stop it. It missed because an electronic warfare officer identified a 340 megahertz frequency, offset from a 2-year-old signals intelligence report, and spent 4 minutes and 17 seconds building a jamming solution nobody asked for on a contact nobody else understood. And because Iran made the same mistake it makes every time, it stayed to watch its missile work. The launch platform that spent 12 days rebuilding the Noor's guidance package had 9 meters of positional accuracy in Sale's targeting solution, and 16 minutes and 44 seconds to feel whatever pride that represented before the first JDAM arrived. The ceasefire had been over since 9:39 in the morning, since the moment someone in Tehran looked at the Islamabad talks and decided the answer was already on the rail. America did not know that until 9:51. Sale knew it 4 days ago. And the lesson Iran took home from the Strait of Hormuz on the morning the blockade began was the one it least expected from a war it thought it understood. That the most dangerous system on the most powerful carrier in the world is not the Spy-6 radar that tracks the missile. It is the electronic warfare officer who flagged a 0.6-second transmission from a 2024 naval exercise and spent 4 days telling everyone what it meant, and was right.